He is not a diplomat, not a spy, not an expert.
The idea of a peace agreement is becoming contagious.
He is a developer, Trump's golf partner, and a man who was discussing penthouse prices just yesterday and today, the fate of the Russia-Ukraine war.
Many would say it's better not to have any contact with him because Putin is a bad guy. I don't consider Putin a bad guy.
He's not just some guy from the store.
Zelensky is in a very difficult situation. He's up against a nuclear power.
A man whom the White House suddenly entrusted with the most important mission of the decade to re-establish contact with Putin and stop the war. I
am 100% sure that Russia does not want to invade Europe. I believed Putin. I took him at his word.
Steve Witkoff is conducting secret negotiations with Kremlin officials, which is causing irritation in Ukraine.
Putin told me a story about how when someone shot at the president, he went to a local church, met with a priest, and prayed for the president.
He is criticized not only by his associates in the US, but also by Russian officials for his inexperience and independent working style, which complicates diplomatic efforts.
My motto, hire the best and trust them with nothing.
The story of a billionaire who suddenly decided to rewrite geopolitics. And about what can happen when the world is entrusted to someone who isn't willing to bring experts onto his team. Who is he? The man who is now promoting a peace plan for Ukraine and why he is called Donald Trump's shadow.
Let me ask you this. What can you do for money in your opinion?
I can do...
His name is Steve Witkoff, a New York billionaire, friend and longtime associate of the current US president. A man who once bought a simple sandwich for the future leader of a great country, and years later became one of those with access to the halls of power in Washington. According to one of the common versions, Witkoff's roots may go back to the Russian Empire. Journalists link his surname to a wave of emigration at the end of the 19th century, given his Jewish heritage. His paternal grandfather and grandmother emigrated from Tsarist Russia to the United States. At that time, millions of Jews were fleeing pogroms, economic restrictions, and political persecution. The Witkoffs became the Witkoffs. After earning a law degree, young Steve began working in a real estate firm in the 1980s. One of the company's clients turned out to be a young developer named Donald Trump. Their friendship began with a sandwich. Witkoff was working on a deal involving Trump, and once he happened to be in the right place at the right time. At a diner where he met Trump, who had forgotten his cash. I
ordered him a ham and Swiss cheese sandwich.
Steve never forgot that meeting. It's not every day you buy sandwiches for millionaires. Trump didn't forget either. The sandwich incident. Despite a 10-year age difference, they quickly became friends. Their acquaintance grew into a family friendship, shared games of golf, and business connections. Over time, Witkoff transformed from a lawyer into a major New York developer. He built, bought, and expanded assets from Manhattan to Florida. His company became a prominent player in the real estate market, and he himself became an influential figure where big money intersects. And high-level politics. Witkoff amassed his fortune thanks to close ties with the post-Soviet criminal world.
In the 1990s, Manhattan's elite real estate became the main money laundering hub for Russian criminal networks fleeing the collapse of the USSR. The FBI testified to Congress about this era. It was no secret. And it was at that time that Witkoff and Trump came to power.
This is big money and a lot of trust for young men.
Today, he is called a shadow negotiator, Trump's special envoy, and even a man promoting a plan favorable to the Kremlin.
I insist. You've heard enough, board lackey. Yes, I like our board.
During Trump's first presidential term, Steve Witkoff remained more of a behind-the-scenes player. On behalf of the White House, he handled business support issues during the COVID-19 pandemic, but he was not among the key political figures.
We live in a world where people are convinced that a good person has no place in politics.
His influence began to grow rapidly. Later, when Trump lost his position and was at risk of ending up behind bars. While many longtime allies started to distance themselves from him, Witkoff was more cunning and therefore became even closer to Donald. Trump considered him one of the most reliable people in his circle.
He delegated authority better than anyone else. He gives us a lot of authority.
With the start of the new 2024 presidential race, Witkoff became one of the main sponsors of the campaign.
I know this man very well. President Trump is the kindest and most compassionate person I have ever met in my life.
Before Trump's return to the White House, Witkoff's name was almost unknown outside the United States. He remained a billionaire developer from New York. However, his personal friendship with Trump grew stronger and their families became closely connected. Later, a grandson was born in the Witkoff family, and he was named Don in honor of the President of the United States. On that very fateful September day, when there was an assassination attempt on Trump at the Mar-a-Lago residence, it was Witkoff who was next to him on the golf course. When Trump once again took the Oval Office, Washington's foreign policy changed swiftly and dramatically. Against this backdrop, Witkoff's role suddenly grew to proportions no one had expected. I
Gave up my business. I don't receive a salary, and I pay all my own expenses. Myself. By
Never before having worked in international relations, he became one of the administration's key negotiators.
I like to say that our positions should be Minister of Misunderstanding and Secretary for Eliminating Misunderstandings, because that's exactly what we were doing on the international stage.
He was assigned three of the most tense areas at the same time: Russia and Ukraine, the Middle East and Iran, thus turning a businessman into one of the central figures in American foreign policy.
You know, we tried to build trust between people who didn't trust each other because of decades of mistrust. And that's not easy to fix.
In January 2025, Witkoff played a key role in the ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas and apparently started to believe in himself.
We have people who know everything about the Middle East but can't communicate. He's an excellent negotiator.
And apparently, Trump believed in him too, which is why he entrusted Steve Witkoff with making peace with Moscow. This involvement in the ceasefire came as a surprise even to those who closely followed the first steps of the new US administration. Keith Kellogg, a general with extensive experience who for a long time was considered the main expert on Ukraine and Russia in Trump's team, was removed from his post because he considered Russia an aggressor. The same can't be said about Trump's friend Steve.
I do business in deal resolution. That's why I'm here. We keep knocking on doors and offering ideas.
Even in 2018, Witkoff criticized the Western economic sanctions against the Kremlin that were imposed after Putin's illegal annexation of Crimea.
As far as I can tell, Witkoff knows nothing about Russia, nothing about Ukraine, nothing about their history, nothing about armed conflicts, nothing about how to negotiate an acceptable ceasefire. And in several meetings with Putin, he showed himself to be a person extremely susceptible to manipulation.
It's hardly surprising that Trump's negotiator appears on Tucker Carlson's show.
I was told, be careful because Putin is a former KGB officer.
The special envoy's first statement was that the key issue of the conflict is the fate of the Russian-speaking residents who supposedly voted in the referendums. For joining Russia sounded like a direct copy from Kremlin talking points.
These territories are Russian-speaking, and referendums were held there, where the majority of people expressed their desire to be under Russian rule. In my opinion, this is precisely the key point in the conflict. This is the first thing that needs to be resolved.
Hearing such a statement, not from Lavrov, but from an American official, was a surprise even for those who thought nothing could surprise them anymore. But an even louder reaction was caused by another part of the interview. Witkoff could barely recall the names of the occupied Ukrainian regions. And then, without a shadow of doubt, he agreed with Carlson's mistaken claim that all these territories were given to Ukraine by Khrushchev.
Donbass, Crimea. Do you know their names? Well, yes. Luhansk and two more. Khrushchev supposedly just made them part of Ukraine. That's right.
There were direct calls to immediately remove Witkoff from the negotiations. It fell to J.D. Vance, the U.S. Vice President, to answer for Witkoff's words.
Critics are simply jealous of his success, and diplomacy in the end comes down to a simple rule: don't be an idiot.
This statement by Vance became a perfect illustration of how Washington's views on foreign policy are changing after Trump's return to the White House. If diplomats used to be chosen from among specialists, now they're people who can buy Trump a sandwich, play golf with him, and flawlessly repeat the right words on air.
I liked him. It seemed to me that he was honest with me. I don't consider Putin a bad guy. It's a complicated situation. It's a war and everything that led up to it. Sigh.
Since then, Witkoff's private jet has landed at Moscow airports more than once. This was a signal that the usual diplomatic routes were being rearranged again. Good morning, Mr. President. I hope this message finds you well and in good spirits today. I trust that everything is proceeding smoothly for you.
Very well. I completely understand and wholeheartedly agree with your comprehensive assessment. This is indeed a most satisfactory and highly commendable outcome, reflecting careful consideration and excellent judgment. They brought that very chiburek to our studio.
Witkoff should really be seen not as a diplomat, but as Trump's true envoy. They don't work through the national security apparatus, nor through professionals. In fact, it's a kind of solo shuttle diplomacy. No team, no experts, no one to at least check his notes before the next meeting in the Kremlin. It gives the impression that in negotiations with Moscow, he goes in almost blindly, but with a huge desire to please. In
Russia, there is a gentleman named Kirill. He has done a lot to renew the dialogue between Moscow and Washington. He became an important conduit connecting the two sides.
Against the backdrop of the ongoing war, he called Putin a great leader, a very intelligent person and politician who strives for lasting peace.
Putin commissioned a beautiful portrait of Trump from a trendy Russian artist and asked for it to be given to the president. It was such a touching moment.
Witkoff, without a shadow of doubt, broadcasts Kremlin talking points.
Witkoff seems to have little grasp of the details and often acts on the fly.
Moscow is happy to use this model of communication. You have to slip the investigator a bribe. He
went crazy over the bribe.
You have to give him a lot, then he'll take it. But then a scandal broke out, which became the point of no return. Bloomberg publishes transcripts of 2 phone conversations. The conversations between Putin's aides and Steve Witkoff concerned the terms for ending the war.
Now, to the point, the fact that a Trump advisor is telling Putin's advisors how to properly manipulate Trump is what we call treason around here. I just want to remind you that in Russia, the US is officially called an unfriendly country and a likely adversary. And it is to these people, these likely adversaries, that Trump's envoy Witkoff is providing assistance. Whose interests is this person working for? Ideally, this is a question that shouldn't be asked by me, but by the President of the United States, Donald Trump, or better yet, by the CIA right away.
You need to convince them of this. This is a very standard form of negotiation. I haven't heard this particular audio, but this is common negotiation practice. And I imagine he's saying the same thing to Ukraine because each side has to make concessions.
The tone of these conversations is striking. Witkoff speaks with his Kremlin counterparts in a friendly manner and even gives them advice.
Watergate doesn't even come close. Trump's special envoy Witkoff advised Putin's aide Ushakov on how best to push the Kremlin's interests with Trump. This became known from leaked phone conversations published by Bloomberg. But that's only part of the problem. From those same leaks, we learned that the so-called 28-point Trump plan is not a plan at all, nor is it Trump's. It is literally a creation of Putin and his aides.
This meeting, its overall atmosphere, what was the tone of the conversation?
The tone, I would say, without exaggeration, was constructively friendly. Putin knows Witkoff well. He has already met with him.
Dmitriev called the transcripts of the phone conversations fake, but Ushakov did not deny it.
He can talk to absolutely anyone on the phone just like that, with Dmitry Mamontov.
Is there something in common?
Why does that interest you? My conversation with Dmitry, you are the Russian representative.
In Kyiv and in the West, the publication caused a shock. The scandal was not only about the content, but also about the manner in which the US President's special envoy discussed the fate of European security with Kremlin representatives.
This idea that we all have to be like Winston Churchill, that the Russians will march across Europe, yes, I find it absurd.
Despite this, Witkoff continues to meet with his Moscow colleagues, and just a couple of weeks later, he flies to Moscow, strolls through the streets, and dines in luxurious restaurants with Putin's puppets.
Who doesn't want to live in a world where Russia and the United States do good things together?
It's true that he's a lousy negotiator and dove of peace. Neither the August summit in Alaska between Trump and Putin, nor the 6 visits to the Kremlin led to a softening of the Kremlin's position or its belligerent one. Rhetoric.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.